Space Connect podcast. Stories, opinion, and insights on the key factors shaping the development of Australia's space industry and how you can connect your business with this emerging sector.
Hello everybody. Right, this is the best thing in the whole event. We're not messing about. We've got 3 astronauts here. Now here's how it's going to work. I'm going to get them all to do a little bit of an introduction and then you guys can ask questions. We've got this here, which I'm just going to throw around. So if someone's got a question, you put your hand up and I'll throw it to you. Only rule, all questions are allowed. You can ask them what you want. Doesn't matter. I'm going to start off though, if you guys could all introduce yourselves. A little bit about you guys, what you've done as astronauts. Just a bit of an introduction. I'll start with you. Paul.
Hi, I'm Paul Scully-Power. I flew way back before any of you were born, back in 1984, so that's about 40 years ago. I flew on the Space Shuttle Challenger, which became very famous after I launched because 2 flights after me, there was a Challenger accident and that changed everything for NASA at that time. So NASA at that point decided that they weren't going to fly for about 3 years, so a lot of us left and I went on from there, from NASA to the Pentagon and ended up working in the White House. So not bad for someone who actually had a little bit of STEM in him.
Katherine?
Hi everybody, my name's Katherine Bennell-Pegg, and I'm so happy to see you here. Who here likes space or would go into space if they got the chance? Yeah, when I was your age, I was just like you, and I remember sitting in the audience, something like you are now, listening to Paul Scully-Power speak. So maybe one day, one of you will be up here talking about listening to us, huh? Wouldn't that be a nice full circle? Anyway, I haven't been to space yet, but when I grew up, I really wanted to be an astronaut, and I became a space engineer. And being a space engineer was so wonderful. It means you get to make innovations and inventions to build satellites and rockets and rovers. And after I did that for a while, I finally got the chance to apply to become an astronaut. And I got selected to represent Australia, which made me very proud. And I went through what's called basic astronaut training, or ASCAN training. And that was a 1.5 years learning so many exciting things like how to do spacewalks or use robotic arms and doing survival expeditions, lots of science too, even foreign languages. And then I've just graduated 1 year ago as an astronaut, which means I'm ready for a mission assignment. But I'm going to pass you over here to someone else that's actually been to space, just like Paul. Eric.
Hello everyone, my name's Eric Phillips and I was in space last month. Can you believe that? Actually, it's hard for me just to have that concept that I was there so recently. And this is a real honor to be with these guys because these guys are career astronauts. They grew up wanting to be astronauts and every decision they made headed them towards becoming an astronaut and eventually will fly into space. I know that. Me, it kind of happened a little bit by accident. I wanted to be an astronaut as well all of my life. I dreamed about going into space, dreamed about being an astronaut, but it was never really a reality for me. So I took a different trajectory. I became a polar explorer, and I've been to the North and South Poles about 30 times on ski expeditions. I've skied across Greenland, but always I had this concept that, wouldn't it be so amazing to be up there? And then, just very luckily, my direction happened to cross with the direction of someone else, and he actually bought a private mission into space and invited me to go along. So that's a demonstration that it doesn't matter who you are or what you are, if you do it with enough passion and enough direction, eventually your path will coincide with someone else's path and you really never know what might happen.
Right, if you've got a question, do you want to put your hands up? I thought there'd be a lot. Right, so what are you going to do? Put your hands up.
The one at the back, see how good you are.
Oh, yeah, but I'm British, I'm English, I can't throw. Right, I'm going to throw it down to you there. Ask a question. And maybe say your name first and then ask your question.
I'm Saskia.
Stand up. So we can all see you.
Have you ever thought that you were going to go to space or be an astronaut, that you were going to go to space?
So let me try and articulate your question. Your question is, have you ever thought about being an astronaut? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the point I want to make is somewhat like Eric, I sort of fell into it. But the lesson to be learned is I was pretty good at mathematics at school, and then I went to university, and then the Australian Navy picked me up all because of my mathematics. And then I went on exchange to the US Navy, and that's how I found out that what NASA did. So I didn't set out to do it, but the lesson to be learned is if you're good at STEM, you never know what the world's got for you.
How did you get? I want to follow up. How did you get picked by NASA? How did you walk in and do this?
I hate to say it, but the standard answer is Andy picked the best. No, but good question, because I was already in NASA before I was selected, because one of the top people in NASA, this is a very good point of view, said when you go to space, especially in the space shuttle where you're orbiting for days on end, you're working very hard. There's all sorts of things you have to do. You've got the payload bay, you've got instrumentation, you're launching satellites and so on. The only time you have to relax in space is looking out the window. Now, if you, for example, go to the Louvre in Paris, which has all the great artwork, and you haven't done an art appreciation course, then you don't get any value out of it. So the higher-ups in NASA said, we've got to get someone who can teach the astronauts an Earth appreciation course, so that when they look back at the Earth, the blue planet, they can see things that others don't see. And so that was my job, and so I was already in the astronaut office when I got selected.
What's it like looking out the window and looking back at Earth?
Well, I got very good long eyesight, or I did then. and everything you people have seen or sort of likely to see is two-dimensional. It's photos, videos of the Earth from space. But I can assure you, when you're on orbit, it's three-dimensional, at least it was for me. For example, if I orbited over Sydney with the unaided eye, I could see things that the airport is very easy to see. I could see things like the bridge. I could make out the main streets of Sydney, and I can even, with the unaided eye, be able to tell you which were the tall buildings. So that changes your perspective dramatically.
Katherine, you've done your astronaut training, but you were involved in space before. How did you get into that industry? What's your tip to these people here?
Well, if you want to work in space, you can have many kinds of jobs. You can have a STEM job, like be a scientist or an engineer, but you don't have to be. You can pretty much think of any job and put the word space in front of it, and there's a job there for you. We need people that drive the trucks with rockets on them. We need people that are fitness instructors for astronauts. We need people to write the law and lead the companies. There's so many kinds of job there. But if you want to be an astronaut and you're at school today, my advice to you is to work hard at school. It's important to do well, because then you have more opportunities. But also work hard outside school as well. Like, work on your fitness, work on who you are as a person and how you behave when you're worried or under stress by doing lots of extracurriculars. And that will set you up to be a really good team player in space, as well as having the STEM. And then pick whatever path you want in STEM. If you want to be an astronaut, you can be a scientist, you can be an engineer, you can be a doctor, you can be a pilot, you can be more than one of those things. And you might just get the chance to apply to be an astronaut one day, and you'll be ready to apply. That's what I did. I chose to be a space engineer, and I hope to just get my chance and be ready when I could apply, and I did.
Now I'm going to bring Eric in here, because you had a little different path. You're on like a private mission, basically, a private person paid to go to space. You actually were asked via text message, I heard. Tell everybody about this, because that's very exciting. You get a text, you want to go to space. Yes. Talk us through this.
That is literally what happened. So I guide polar expeditions. I take people on long ski expeditions to the North Pole, the South Pole, and we were guiding, together with my daughter, an expedition in Svalbard, which is a group of islands off the north coast of Norway, way up in the Arctic. And we had a guy on the trip. I was skiing next to him, and he told me, actually, I'm the first crypto billionaire. He made $1 billion from Bitcoin. He was one of the early miners. I don't know, 15 years or so ago. And we started talking about flying into space, going to the moon, going to Mars. And I started singing Fly Me to the Moon. And little did I know that this would actually get me the gig, because 8 months later, I was in Cape Town with my daughter. We were about to fly to Antarctica, and I get a text on my phone. And it's from this guy, and he says, basically, you want to come into space with me? It's like, oh my God, what? I showed my daughter, and she read it, and she said, yep, looks like you're going into space. That's how my understanding of going into space, or the revelation, arrived via text. So you never know how and when it happens. But he chose me because of my polar experience, because he had this idea of completing the very first orbits over the North and South poles. This has been done by satellites before, but never by humans. Paul was almost on the first mission way back in the 80s on a space shuttle mission to do exactly that. So this is not a new concept. But Chun Wang, he was the first one to actually approach an agency like SpaceX. We flew up with SpaceX and say, this is what I want to do. I'm going to plan it together with you. We want to achieve this. And that's exactly what we did. And we made the first orbits over the North and South poles.
So that's another avenue to go to space, become a billionaire.
Yeah. Right, next question. Oh, we got a lot of hands here. Go on, Paul, you're going to throw it.
Come on.
My name's Bella, and I was wondering if anyone ever told you you would never be able to become an astronaut.
Great question. I think we can go through all of these people. Sorry? Oh, basically, did anyone ever tell you you couldn't be an astronaut? Did anyone doubt that you could do it?
No, in fact, I've got something that you might want to think about. It's sort of guided all my life. And it's very simple. It says, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. In other words, if you get an opportunity, at least take it. Very much like a fork in the road, you can go down the fork one way, and if it's not the right way, go back and go back the other fork. So just remember that. If you come to a fork in the road, take it.
And I've got a little related story, because I used to be a teacher. I taught outdoor education for 5 years. And other subjects earlier on. And I remember I was on a cross-country run with some of my students. It was a boarding school out in the wilderness, called Timbertop actually, which is a campus of Geelong Grammar School, up in the mountains of Victoria. And I fell over and I broke my wrist. And I went to the doctors, and the doctor took an x-ray and came back and he said, you probably want to give up your plan to become a polar explorer, because I told him that, this is what I want to do. And actually I was planning my very first polar expedition at the time to Ellesmere Island, which is way up in the north of Canada. And he said, well, you can kind of give up that career because this wrist is really going to hinder you. And it's like, well, I'm going to prove you wrong, aren't I? If anyone tells me that I can't be something, then I'm going to be exactly that thing. So I actually turned around, I rehabilitated my wrist, I made it strong, and of course I became a polar explorer and then an astronaut. So, don't allow people to tell you, well, people can tell you can't do something, but you can turn that around and you can actually be that person that you want to be.
Katherine?
Yeah, Bella, and for the other kids, don't accept and believe anyone that tells you you're incapable of doing something. You're the only one in control of what you are capable of. If you want to put the effort in and work hard at something, there's no reason why it can't be you. It may be unlikely, it may not in the end be possible, but the first thing you've got to do is give it a red hot go. When I applied to be an astronaut, there were over 23,000 other people that applied for a handful of positions. Now, if you look at those odds, most people would not apply, so there's no way. But, it's the people that didn't apply that didn't even get the chance. You've got to put your hat in the ring and give things a go if you want to have a chance to do things that are great, even if it scares you a little bit. In fact, if something scares you a little bit and it's something that you'd like to do, you should probably do it, because that's how things get really exciting and you can progress and do things you couldn't even imagine.
Right, brilliant question. Can we see if we can get the microphone? Can we give it a big throw so we can get it over there? There you go. That was good. Oh, we got a lot of questions here. Right, I'm going to go to you down there. There you go. Oh, you get that?
My name's Harriet, and I was wondering if there were any things that you were unsure whether you wanted to do when you were preparing to go into space.
Very good question.
I'll stop that. You've got to understand that back in those days, and I think it's still the same today, when they built the space shuttle, it was built by literally hundreds of different contractors, all of whom got the job because they were the lowest bidder. Think about that. So I think when I launched, I actually counted, I think there was over 100 single point of failure modes. So that makes you think.
Yeah, for me, like certainly some parts of astronaut training were quite hard. We had to learn lots of different topics, and one of them was learning a foreign language. I'm not very good at learning foreign languages, so that was really intimidating for me. But I knew that that was my weakness across the topic, so I just had to work harder at it. And it was kind of fun to get the chance to learn in that way. Other astronauts were better and good at different things, but you can find the joy in learning or doing anything if you look hard enough.
Yeah, and I've got a related story because when I was selected for the mission or invited to join the mission, the seat that I was given was seat number 3, and seat number 3 is the pilot. We have it's a co-pilot. We have a vehicle commander and we have a vehicle pilot, which is essentially the pilot and the co-pilot. And I was in a co-pilot seat. And it's like, wow, co-pilot? Actually, none of us were aviation pilots. I think we're actually the first crew to go into space with not a single pilot on board. We were trained to be astronaut pilots, but we had no background in flying aeroplanes. Now, here I was in the co-pilot seat, and I'm looking up at the display, my first time in a simulation. It's like, I don't understand any of this. I've never been a computer programmer. I've never been an aviation pilot. I've never known systems. I've never known flight engines. I've never known state machines. I've never even been a gamer. What am I doing here? I'm in the wrong spot. And then we worked through it, and I had sleepless nights. I couldn't function, and I just could not imagine how I could support the rest of my crew in this position. So SpaceX and I collaborated, and we said, you know what? You're in the wrong spot. They put me into seat number 4, which is mission specialist, and they put, goodness me, the robotics engineer into seat number 3, the co-pilot seat. It was the perfect swap. Suddenly, I was in a position where everything made sense. Now I was in the lead position, so when we trained for emergencies like fire, like depressurization, like unassisted egress, like splashing down in an ocean and having to get out in the little life raft, I was the one who took action. And for me, being the action man, for want of a better term, this completely suited me. And this is a really good demonstration that you might find your end position in life or in what you want to do as a career, but within that career, it might not be the exact right thing. Shuffle around a little bit to find exactly what suits you, and everything turns out all right, as it did for me.
Eric, you're in the cockpit, whatever. You're in this rocket. It's about to blast off. There's a countdown timer going. What are you feeling? How does it feel? What's it like? Talk us all through this.
Look, it's incredible. I mean, we sat there in that Dragon capsule, 80 meters up on top of this Falcon rocket, and we're listening to the countdown. Even prior to that, we're kind of looking at each other and we're chatting on the intercom. We've got an intercom where we can talk to each other and ground do not hear what we're saying. And you know what? There was not an ounce of anxiety, fear, trepidation amongst the 4 of us in that capsule. You know why? Because, and Paul can attest to this, and so can Katherine, of course, is that you train to do simulations over and over and over. We call them sims, so that we become really familiar with what it feels like to be under pressure, under stress. That could have been a really stressful moment, us sitting up there, but we fell back on that experience of our training. We just did it over and over. So by the time we got and sat up there and listened to that countdown, 9, 8, 7, it's like big smiles on our faces. This is it. We're ready to go. And then we can just hear that rumbling of those engines below us, those 9 Merlin engines. And then we left Earth. And I tell you what, it was unbelievable. And the power, you feel the power in your seat. You feel the shaking in your seat. And you're inside our suits with our visors closed. And it's like, this is it. We're going into space.
Paul, what was it like when you blasted off?
I agree with Eric. We did so many simulations, they almost become boring. But I took a rather unique approach. I went to sleep on the pad. And most people don't believe that, but in those days we were all instrumented, like you go to a doctor and you get instrumented, your heart rate and your pulse and everything else. So I actually have the evidence that I went to sleep on the pad because I thought I have to do this just one more time.
Wow, you fell asleep. That's extraordinary. Can we get the speaker back? Thank you very much. Great question. Oh, typically English. Right, who's next for a question? Right, I'm going to try and go at the very back there, right at the back. Oh dear.
My name is Hussein, and were you ever what do you feel when you were in the space?
What do you feel like when you're in space? Paul, start with you.
It's called zero gravity. You actually float around, and what surprised me, well, I have to back off. We got trained in what's called the vomit comet, where you actually go up in a plane without any seats and you free fall for 10,000 feet. So you get used to that. But what's really surprised me in zero gravity when you're doing it, minute after minute, hour after hour, what surprised me is the fact that your brain accommodates that extremely fast. I'd say on orbit, certainly within 5 minutes, and I think less than that, I was able to, you could walk, don't forget in zero gravity, you can walk on the roof, but my brain would adjust to that, and so the roof became the floor, and the floor became the roof, and so there was no confusion. It was quite amazing.
Eric?
Yeah, same thing. I adapted to space so quickly. I mean, it's unbelievably fun. You would have seen probably online on YouTube or something, astronauts floating around in space and flipping, doing somersaults. It's like that. Can you remember the first time mum or dad put floaties on your arm and you jumped into a swimming pool and you were just floating around and it felt like magic? It felt like so cool. That's what it's like being in space. And you can just touch with your foot the side of the capsule and you'll zing across to the other side. It's like there's the cupola up there, the great big Perspex viewing dome, and you'd be down on the cargo bay and you just push a little bit and you'd fly like super person up into space and being up in that capsule. It's like that fun. It's like that. You just want to have fun all the time and spin around and rotate and do flips. But you have to be a little bit careful, particularly when you first take your suit off. You have to keep your head pretty still because you have a thing called space adaptation sickness or space motion sickness. So you do have to be a little bit careful. It's a little bit similar to motion sickness down on the ground, but it works on a different system. And I was really scared about this because I get terribly seasick when I go on the ocean. But all of our medical team was saying, don't worry about it. You probably won't get sick up in space. And for the first 24 hours, I was 100% fine. It was amazing. But then slowly I did feel a little bit nausea after that. And we all got a little bit sick up there too. But we were totally adapted to it by the time we came back down. It's so much fun.
Yeah, I haven't been to space, but we trained for space, like Paul said, in those Vomit Comet aircraft. Also doing scuba diving underwater in deep pools, so you have some floating when you're practicing your missions, and also in virtual reality, where things are suspended from the roof so they feel weightless. And in that Vomit Comet, it's absolutely amazing. For about 22 seconds at a time, you float free inside it. It's just like skydiving, but inside the plane. The plane falls around you, and they give you a little countdown, and it feels like the floor falls away. And as the floor falls away, everyone's smiles goes up. It's really fun. But you have to remember two things. One is don't jump because you'll shoot across to the other side and bang your head. The other is don't swim because you get this incredible urge to kick your feet if you're not touching anything to get to the other side. And that doesn't really work in air, and your feet might be near someone's face, which isn't very good. But when we did that training, we had to learn things like how to use a drill in space, and you have to hold on. Otherwise, you'll spin as well as the drill. When you do CPR, that first aid where you push someone's heart like this, you can't just kneel or stand next to them. You have to do a handstand on them and do squats on the roof. Otherwise, you just push yourself off. You have to learn to walk with your toes under railings so your hands are free to carry things. And it's really hard to not fall to the sides. And we practiced moving along a rail like a spacewalk with bags behind us. like our tool bags, but they would sometimes float up and whack you in the back of the head if you moved the wrong way. So that was a really good way to train for space. And I've been lucky enough to ask a lot of astronauts that I work with about what it was like in space. And they found most of them said to me they found it really hard to explain because humans haven't been in space for all that long, right? So if you think in the world, some cultures have many ways to talk about snow. We have many ways to talk about rain. You have drizzle, you have heavy rain, you have light rain, you have mist and fog. In space, we just don't have the words yet. And when you're up there, you can see the thin blue line of atmosphere against the black, I'm told, but it's a bright, bright blue, almost looking at a dark blue, bright laser. So you feel it's bright, but it's a dark colour. And it's very, very hard to explain these things in a way that we have language for. I don't know if Paul or Eric can explain that further.
No, not really, but I've got a question you just prompted me. Is VR an option for learning about space, about the weightlessness? Can VR be used?
Yeah, VR is part of the tool sets to use. So for VR, we use it to practice spacewalks and to train on spacewalks. So you're inside a game with the VR goggles on, and you have equipment handles that you move around that have weights on them, so they feel like you're moving stuff in space. So in space, it might feel weightless, so to say, but things still have inertia, which means you still have to push them to get them to start to move and hold them to slow them down. And that's something you have to practice for yourself when you move around too. If you push off one side of the space station inside a module, you have to stop yourself at the other end. You often might think when you get up about starting to go somewhere on Earth, but you often don't think, oh, I've got to stop before I get to that table, or I've got to be careful how I go around this corner, I'm going to miss the bend and keep on going. But your body adapts really quick to space. Our bodies are the ultimate adapters.
Right, can we get the speaker back? Great question, thank you very much. Go on. Oh dear, oh dear. Right, where are we going to go next? Right, I'm going to go over that way. Oh, no, oh.
I'm Camilla, and my question is, what's your favourite memory from training to go to space?
Great question, thank you very much. Paul, start with you.
Well, as I said, you do a lot of simulations, so I guess one of my great memories is if you get a call at 2 a.m. on a Sunday morning to get in a simulator, you better get there fast.
Yeah, look, my favourite time really was actually that moment that I explained earlier when I went from a position of feeling out of my depth to suddenly feeling that I was in a position that made so much sense to me. That was just a complete revelation, and up until that point I just really didn't think that I can do it. And after that point it's like, I can really do this, I'm going into space.
I had so many favourite moments, but just one was on winter survival. We had to do some scenarios out in a very snow-covered mountainous area in Europe, and we had to rescue somebody from a frozen lake and get them to a helicopter and survive in the forest. And doing that together with my classmates was a really great experience. It was challenging, but really enjoyable as well. And we have successfully rescued them from the frozen lake, got all of ourselves warm, trekked through the forest, and got out in a helicopter.
Do you all become really good friends doing this? Because it's the most unusual course in the world. Do you all get really close going through this shared experience?
If you suffer together, you tend to bond together. And the nice thing that I really enjoyed about astronaut training was it wasn't competitive. It was like being in a team together. You weren't trying to beat each other. You were trying to go forward as a team. So it was really great, just like you might have in sports or other activities you do.
I can comment on that. I've been on both sides, being someone who gets selected, but I've also sat on the selection board for NASA for, as Katherine says, you get thousands of people applying, and we winnow that down to about 20, and then we interview them. But the one thing we look for, it's really interesting. It sounds strange to start with, but we're looking for rugged individualists who are team players. Think about that. Rugged individualists who are team players. That's what counts.
Great question. Thank you very much. There we go. I caught it in the end. Right, I'm going to go over there at the back. Whoa. Oh.
Hi, I'm Tilly, and I was wondering what's the coolest thing you saw in space or what you want to see in space?
Coolest thing you saw in space, Eric?
Thanks for your question, Tilly. For me, it was the first time the nose cone opened, because we're on a polar orbit, right? We're going over the Arctic and Antarctica. The first time we opened the nose cone, and the first time I could get myself up into that cupola, we were over Antarctica. Now, we launched on the dark side of the equinox. I don't know if you know anything about the solstice and the equinox, but it's to do with the sun's relationship with the Earth. But we always wanted to launch during our summertime so that all of Antarctica would be lit up and some of the Arctic would be lit up. I wanted to see Antarctica more than I wanted to see the Arctic. Unfortunately, we launched when the darkness was over Antarctica, but all of the edge, the coastal areas, the perimeter, we could still see that, and it was so beautiful. So for me, my first moment of being up in the cupola and seeing Earth from that particular perspective over Antarctica was just mind-blowing. And it was a really deeply moving experience for me.
Paul?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt about the first time you look back at the Earth from space, that's the big thing. And for a whole bunch of reasons, you see this almost magic blue and white ball totally surrounded by the blackness and the infinity of space. But when you get to the night side of your orbit, and don't forget we're orbiting at 90 minutes, so we have 45 minutes of daylight, 45 minutes of nighttime, and the sunrise and sunset obviously every 45 minutes. So if you worry about jet lag, you're out of business. But on the dark side of the orbit, if you look at the sky, which is dark, you can see all the stars. But you cannot make out any of the constellations that you know of, because I did a count. There's probably, what you can see with the naked eye, about 50 times as many stars that you see down here because of the atmosphere of the Earth. And with 50 times the number of stars, it's wall-to-wall stars, and you literally cannot make out the constellations.
For me, I would, if I could pick anything, if I could have another dream beyond being an astronaut, it would be to open that hatch and do a spacewalk. Ideally on the moon, if I could be so ambitious, because to be able to open that hatch and step out, you're basically wearing a spaceship, right? Like a spacewalk suit, an EVA suit, is a spaceship that's just human-shaped. But it's really immersive, and you're going out there to do work that's really important, whether it's maintaining a space station or installing scientific equipment. But just that experience of stepping out and to doing the hardest thing that astronauts can probably do would be very special.
Great question. We can get the microphone back. Oh, thank you very much. Right, I think we should go somewhere over there. Eric, do you want to do the truck? You'll be better at this.
Sure.
Tara? No. Okay. Hi, I'm Charlotte, and my question is, what promoted you to, what promoted you to become who you are now?
I can answer that very quickly. I've already answered it. When you come to a fork in the road, take it.
I would say if you could choose to be optimistic or pessimistic, meaning look on the positive or the bright side of something rather than the bad side, take it. Like, look for the good in everything because it's there, and that helps you to be happier and more resilient when things aren't going easily.
A lot of people are going to put up walls in your trajectory of where you are now and where you want to be. And they might be deliberate or they might be accidental. They might just kind of come up out of nowhere. But there's always a way under, around, or over that wall. Just keep pushing, keep finding a way through, around, or over that wall, and you'll find a way of doing it. I mean, it's one of the incredible things about space, right? Initially, I suppose when humans first started looking into space and thinking, what's up there? How do we get there? There was there were walls everywhere. This is impossible. We could never launch rockets and get up there. But actually, that's exactly what happened. You just find ways of doing things. Keep putting one foot in front of the other.
Right, thank you very much. Right. It's not going to go well, is it? Oh, there is it. I'm rubbish, aren't I? Absolutely hopeless. Thank you very much. Right, we're going to take some questions from the school at the back there. So anyone over there have got a question? Katherine, you do the throwing.
Oh, okay.
Who's that big throw?
That's Greta. Yes, Greta.
Hi, my name's Greta. This one might be a bit over the line. Were you ever worried or have fear of the thought of something going wrong, when you're going up in space? And did that ever hold you back?
Great
to
question.
taking the next step?
Great question, Paul.
The answer is no, but I came close to it because when you lift off, there's a lot of thrust, as Eric says. But when you go from that maximum thrust to zero gravity, it's instantaneous. It's like you if you weren't strapped in, you'd instantly float. But the instant we went from max thrust to zero thrust and we were in zero gravity, the first thing I saw was this screw slowly, or bolt actually, slowly floating past my visor, and I thought, there we go again, NASA and the low bid.
For me, I think that I would probably be more worried about something going wrong with people I care about on Earth and I couldn't be there for them or get back. There are certainly risks when you go to space. The riskiest parts are launch and re-entry, followed by a spacewalk. Astronauts on the space station today can hear the pings of space debris bouncing off the front of the space station, which is another emerging risk. But we go to space to make breakthroughs and do things you can't do on Earth. So risks are taken because what you're doing is important. As long as those risks are measured and necessary, I think most astronauts can accept them.
And at SpaceX, we certainly talk about those risks all the time. This is very upfront. It's very transparent. We talk about the concept of maybe a rocket blowing up. We talk about the concept of there being a fire on board. We talk about the concept of being holed by a micrometeorite and what might ensue from that. But we train for those two things. The Dragon capsule, it can actually sustain being holed by a small object. It pumps nitrox into it and it starts to try to pressurize again. We can actually plan, our pilots can plan an emergency deorbit and actually plan a splashdown almost anywhere on Earth. So, we can train for those things. There are certain dangers up there, but we also know that Dragon and Falcon technology are really mature technologies now. They've been flown many, 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 many times. There's almost a Falcon rocket launching every day in America, sending satellites up to Earth. So it's a mature technology, and again, we could fall back on our training and our knowledge that these space agencies do things so brilliantly, so perfectly, that we can have a great deal of trust in what's about to happen.
Great question. Should we have another question from down there? Maybe if you throw it back to Eric and Eric can do the throw.
You missed out, didn't you?
Hello. My name's Aaliyah, and me and my friend Bertha want to ask what your favorite thing to eat in space was and what your least favorite thing to eat was.
Brilliant question. Paul, what was the food like up there?
The food is quite good because it's just like microwave. But the one thing I did is I changed NASA's rules, I guess, and I insisted that they take M&Ms to space. Not only so I could eat them, but I could throw them in the air and they could float around.
Thank you for your service. I look forward to the M&Ms.
The food that we took into space, it was kind of like camping food. And really, the Dragon capsule that we flew in is a bit like a small caravan. So it really felt like a caravanning, tenting, camping trip while we were up there. And the food wasn't particularly inspiring. You sort of rip the top off a packet and you eat a burrito or a tortilla or something, or maybe a little bit of dal or some curry or something. But none of it is heated. There's no heating capability in Dragon. We can't boil a kettle and have a nice hot cup of coffee or tea. So it's not particularly great. But what we did do on board was we started to grow mushrooms. And actually the lead researcher is right here in this room at the moment. So we took this substrate and we started the very early growth of mushrooms up there. They didn't get to the point where we could harvest them and eat them, but this is something that we're looking at doing into the future, particularly on long duration missions. So I would have liked to snap off a little oyster mushroom and eat them. And sometime in the future, that's probably what astronauts will do. They will start to grow and harvest their own food on board.
So you should start the mushroom club.
So with space food, it's definitely got better over time. When humans first went to space on short missions, it was basically what people called tubes and cubes. You kind of suck stuff out of toothpaste-looking tubes, or you eat small cubes of dehydrated food, not very tasty. Today on Dragon, they have prepackaged food, which is a capsule that can go up on its own, or it can go up and dock to things like the space station. On the space station, you don't have like an oven, but you can add hot or cold water, and you can eat any kind of food pretty much that doesn't make crumbs, because if you make crumbs, they'll float around and might get in your ear or your eye or into some electrical equipment right away or weeks down the track. So no crumbs. You also can't have anything that has like living bacteria in it and stuff like that, because it could go off, and you have to have the food up there sometimes for a long time. So no fresh yogurt or things like that, although there was an astronaut that made his own Greek yogurt from probiotic powder and milk powder, and told ground control after the fact when everything was fine and healthy. So when astronauts go up there, one of the nice things is that they get a certain allocation of what they call preference food, 30 or 40%. So an Australian astronaut could take Australian food in the future, whatever that may be. And when you're up there, you tend to crave things that are a bit more salty, because it's like you have a bit of a head cold because all the fluids kind of crowding out your nostrils, so you can't taste as well. So people like strong, salty, spicy flavours. So things like Vegemite would probably be quite popular, I imagine.
Well, we've got time for a couple more questions if we can get the speaker back. Thank you very much. Right, Eric?
Hello, my name is Caitlin, and I want to ask, how does it feel to be probably one of the millions of people on Earth who want to be astronauts who can't be one?
It's an amazing feeling, and it's a responsibility too. I'm number 629th person to fly into orbit, and 700 and something that's actually flown into space. That includes the suborbital missions that go up and down. And there's a real responsibility that comes with this, because yes, we're one of a very few number of people that have done this, and we know that half the world, probably more, wants to do it. So we want to demonstrate to people, as I hope that we've done with you today, is to keep following, keep pursuing those dreams, keep climbing over those walls, keep putting that one step in front of the other, because these possibilities will arise. Be the best that you can in what you do, and it doesn't matter how remote and how obscure it is what you're doing. Katherine was explaining this earlier. It doesn't matter what you're into. At some point, it's going to be required in space. I guarantee you, because at some point, we're not going to be flying a handful of people into space at a time. We know that currently, SpaceX are working on flying eventually hundreds of people into space at any given time. And they're all going to have roles on space. They're going to be looking at health and nutrition and engineering and technicalities. And so your particular field of expertise and passion and joy will eventually be needed. So you just have to keep pushing and hope that, again, that your path aligns with someone else's path, and that's what gets you into space. Keep pushing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely aware that I carry a lot of hopes and dreams on my shoulders. 7 out of 10 Australian kids under 12 would go to space if they could, which is amazing. And in the future, you never say never, and maybe when you're an adult, there'll be an astronaut program in Australia. There's about 100 active astronauts in the world today that are government astronauts. That's not very many, but the exciting thing is that you can have other capable people like Eric go to space as well and do good work up there. So there's more and more kinds of missions, more and more kinds of destinations, more and more ways to go to space to do different jobs and roles. And I think that's really, really great. Training alongside my astronaut class was another astronaut reservist because he hadn't finished the training yet, but he had one leg. And they were doing work to see if he could go to space because in every other respect, he was a great candidate to go to space. And they found that that could actually happen. So doors are opening all the time. And when you grow up, you can help open them for other people too.
Yeah, that puts it in perspective, Eric. I never thought about that. You talk about 700 plus people going to space. I think I'm number 69 on the list. But the point is the numbers are increasing. And think about it, 100 years ago, very few people flew in an aeroplane. Now everyone does it. So it's going to be the same thing.
Great question. We've got time for one more, I think. If you want to get it back, we've got a lot of people.
I'll do that.
In the middle somewhere.
Thank you. Katherine, do you want to do the honours? Last question.
Oh, goodness. Okay. That way.
My name is Jacinta, and my question is, what made you want to go into space?
What made you want to go into space? Paul, what of you?
Unlike everyone else, I didn't set out to do it. I was working in NASA, as I said. But I guess to answer your question precisely, I wanted to go to space when they asked me, would I?
Katherine?
For me, it started really young, when I was probably a little bit younger than many of you are now. Every astronaut's different. Some, they get an opportunity and realise it's something they'd love to do later in life. Some start when they're very young. And for me, it was that curiosity, right? I like to look under rocks for bugs. I like to climb trees and look at the horizon. I like to lie on the grass in my garden and look up at the stars. And it was that urge for adventure and curiosity that really got me interested. I thought, what greater adventure could you have than to explore those pinpricks of light in the sky, which are whole worlds no one's ever been up close to before. And then I got older and I really like science. I like reading about science. I liked flying planes as a teenager, and that I realized was something you could do if you worked on space or went to space. And then after I became a space engineer, I really learned that space is so important for helping us look after our environment, for creating new medicines and many other breakthroughs, and it really underpins our society and quality of life. So the reasons I wanted to go to space have definitely evolved over time, but only got stronger and stronger.
So for me, I was 7 years old. I was sitting in my classroom and there was a call over the speaker for everyone to go to the gymnasium. So we walked into the gymnasium, we all sat down and they rolled out a small black and white television in front of us all, and we watched the very first moon landing live. I was 7 years old and I watched that. And although I didn't really have a concept of what was going on, I knew that must have been something really important because the school never did this. We never sat in front of the television and watched some strange event happen. And although, of course, I wanted to be an astronaut, I never really thought it was possible for me to actually be an astronaut because this was an unrealistic goal. But what did start from that point, what did germinate, was this idea that I want to go to places on Earth that nobody else ever went to. That seemed to be achievable. I couldn't get up to the stars, but I could go to the edge of Antarctica, even further to the South Pole. I could go to the edge of the Arctic, even further to the North Pole. That's exactly what I did. And that started from that very moment in 1969 when I watched those first people land on the moon. So again, it doesn't matter what path you take, whether you actually feel like you can become an astronaut and fly into space. Just keep following your passions as deeply as you can.
That was great. I think that is probably...
I just want to make one.
Go on.
You remind me, Eric, I also watched the moon landing in '69. And when I watched that, I had no comprehension whatsoever that 15 years later, only 15 years later, I'd be in space. So you never know. When you come to the fork in the road, take it.
Paul says, well, you never know. Right, everyone, come in, a round of applause for our 3 astronauts, yeah?
Thank you. Thank you.
Called it in the end.